which is actually 90% in use. Okay. So any questions? No?
Why do you put VT?
Yes, you do need VT. Now, there is a catch to it. If you do not have VT, let's say do not have VT or AMD Pacifica, I can still run it. But I need to modify the kernel of the operating system. The kernel of the operating system should be modified. Now to do that with Linux it is very easy. If you want to do with Windows, you have to talk to Bill Gates. So if you do not have the Intel VT or AMD Pacifica, you will be able to run the VMs, but these VMs can only be Linux. If you want to run a Windows virtual machine, it has to be a VT or a Pacifica. Okay. So any other questions? No? And just to inform you, Microsoft has announced a tie-up with Zen. If you go to the Zen, this website is, you can try it out in your free time if you want to. zensource.com. If you go to this website, the first thing that you'll see is Microsoft has tied up with Zen. So in the future, this will be a very big hit. But maybe after 2 years. But right now, it's still in testing phase. Okay? And another disadvantage of Zen is management. ESX, it's okay to have 3 virtual machines. Let's say I have on one server 64 virtual machines, and I have such DL3. I have some 10 DL380s. So I'll have 64,000 virtual machines to manage. Very difficult with Zen. With ESX, I have something known as virtual center. I can use it to manage. But with Zen, it's still not. You still cannot manage efficiently. Okay. And that is when HP Sim comes into picture. HP Sim in the future releases will support Zen. So you can manage all the virtual machines using the VM, virtual machine management. We'll talk about that later. Okay. So this is about virtualization, why virtualization. So any questions?
How to brand the capacity of the system? For example, how many memory to provide?
Okay, so the question is, what is the minimum configuration or what is the requirement for my host server? It depends on how many virtual machines you want to have on top. If my virtual machine on, let's say I have 2 GB memory. If each virtual machine can take say 256 MB, that means I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 virtual machines. So how many virtual machines do you want to run is the question. And what is, okay, for these virtual machines, what are your requirements? For each virtual machine, how much of memory do you want to give? In your scenario?
I mean, is there any sizing tools?
Yes, there is. Are there any sizing tools? From HP? HP has a VMware sizing tool. VMware sizing tool available. It's available in HP.com. Probably in the evening I'll download it and show it to you. And VMware also has a capacity planner. That is more in terms of how to consolidate. But if you're looking for a sizing tool, yes, HP VMware sizing tool is available. I'll give you a link to that later.
Besides from this, besides of this one, is there any other?
There is one from VMware also, but that is very generic. It does not apply to HP servers or anything. It can apply to any server. So in that tool, you will have to tell how many virtual machines you want, what is the configuration of the virtual machine, and then you have to say next. It will tell you your server should have minimum of 6 GB, 8 GB or whatever. So that is from VMware, but VMware has removed it from its website now. I don't know why. So it has removed it. Maybe they are upgrading it or something. But HP still has that tool, you can download it. Maybe the VMware tool is, if you go type the VMware sizing tool in Google, you might actually get it from somewhere. Any other questions on virtualization? No? So I will not go deep into, because we talked most of this. We've really covered most of the topic. Why do you use virtualization? You use virtualization for server consolidation. We talked about it. Client consolidation. Client consolidation is something like VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure. Now, it's something like this. Let's say I have these systems over here. All of them are, let's say, thin clients. Okay, HP thin clients or any other thin clients. And I can connect them to one big blade server or one big server, and I can get operating systems here. That is known as client consolidation. Okay, I will talk about it later on. I can use it for disaster recovery, workload optimization, extending life of legacy environment. If I buy a DL380G5 today, HP DL380G5, or an IBM server, the latest generation IBM server, you will not be able to run Windows 2000 on top of it. Why? Because it's not supported. That is where VM comes into picture, virtualization. I can create a virtual machine on top of my DL380 and run Windows 2000 on it. It is still supported. Okay. Test and development, again, we talked about it earlier. This is more in terms of why do you need virtualization. Without virtualization, the utilization is of the servers is maximum 40%. IDC figures have shown that in a data center, the utilization is not more than 50%. With virtualization, you can go up to 80%. Okay, so these are just different slides which I talked about. This is the types of virtualization that we talked about. Now, let's look at the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages of each one of them. Microsoft Virtual Server or GSX, the first one. The advantage is free, and it is, I'll not talk about this. And the disadvantages, the performance. Performance is very low, and no support for vMotion and other stuff. ESX, the advantage is it's the performance overhead is low, it's mature, it's good in terms of management. The disadvantage is VMware specific operating environment. So you have to install an operating system. The price is not given here because the slide was prepared by VMware. Okay. But price is the biggest constraint for using ESX. Then you have Zen. The advantage is open source and the performance overhead is less. Disadvantage is early adoption. It's still not production ready yet. Okay, I will talk about this later. It's about how you can use HP SIM to manage your entire infrastructure. Okay. So what we'll be talking about for the rest of the day is all this. Okay. We'll talk about the various things that are available, the vMotion, high availability, everything. Let me again just write on the board.